It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Catherine McLaughlin started at the TCEQ as a regional investigator in the Beaumont region, but we were lucky enough to talk her into coming on up to Austin at some point and using her Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science to good effect in the public water system programs. She joined the Texas Optimization Program in 2018, and you know, cross connection is a very specialized and important task. The two things that are causing most public health events from waterborne illness are failure of cross connection, that is to say, actual cross connection, or inadequately treated wells. So it's really important from a public health perspective. Historically, some of you all in this room may remember Jim Heiberg back from the 90s, who had his helper Joel, and then Joel and Amy, and so on and so forth. So right now, Catherine is doing this without a second person, so she's doing twice the job for half the money.
Welcome.
Catherine, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, thanks, Alicia, I appreciate it. So like she said, my name is Catherine McLaughlin. I'm with the TCEQ's Water Supply Division and the Texas Optimization Program and Response Team. We're going to be talking about some of the things that Ron had talked about in his previous session. If you're just now joining us, that was another great backflow-focused presentation, but we are going to be zooming in on customer service inspections. We're going to be diving deep into kind of how are we looking at these things, and, well, how to customer service inspect and communicate and get all these requirements in. So first, we're going to start off with some key regulations. We'll talk about some definitions, inspecting and walkthrough. This section's also going to kind of talk about a little bit of so as a public water system, how do you want to facilitate and encourage folks to do customer service inspections, get them completed, and have them recorded? Finally, we're going to talk about some weird situations, caveats, challenges that you might run into when doing these inspections. So let's jump into those key regulations and definitions. So what do we have on the books that, well, is trying to protect public health and prevent backflow? So first, let's talk about what the heck a cross connection even is. We know that this is a physical connection between our public water supply and something that is either treated to a lesser quality, might be actually or potentially hazardous, something that we don't want getting into our water causing complaints or getting us in the news or causing any incidents. So we know backflow, as the name would imply, that this is water going backwards. This is the undesirable reversal of flow of not just other liquids, but we're going to look at gases, particulates, microorganisms, all those fun little critters that you don't want to be putting in your water supply that could, well, impact public health. We kind of the state of Texas looks at things a little bit differently than other states. With us, we look at hazards as non-health hazards and health hazards. So you'll see health hazards referred to as high hazards in a lot of other different cases. But this is going to be your substance that causes death. It's going to get you sick. It's going to send you to the hospital, or it's going to have a high probability of causing such effects. There's a couple different examples. I used to live in East Texas, and oh boy, there's plenty of those there. Things like hospitals, we have those across the state, obviously. Chicken, I know slaughterhouses, if you like to eat meat, oh boy, don't go into one of those. That is a nasty health hazard, and you will want to be a vegetarian after this. And finally, we're kind of looking at some of those really dangerous chemical facilities, chemical plants, refineries, even just, well, factories and things that use water in ways that we don't want to be consuming. On the flip side, non-health hazards, so these won't get you sick, but they are certainly going to cause some aesthetic problems. They're going to be something more of along the lines of a nuisance or aesthetically objectionable. So thinking of our pool water example, that might be safe to drink, hopefully. I say that because, boy, have I seen some green pools, but we're not going to go into that. But something where, oh my gosh, this tastes terrible. Why is it a weird color? Why is it a weird color? Why is it warm? Boom. We have technically drinkable water, but we don't want to be drinking that. Some irrigation systems, I know controversial take, are considered non-health hazards in the state of Texas. A lot of the times these, hose bibs, a lot of these times you can just slap on one of those guys and a lot of the times you're done actually protecting from those non-health hazards. So, all right, don't allow any cross connections. So no water connection from any public drinking water supply system shall be allowed where there's an actual or potential contamination hazard. So there's that word potential. That gives us as public health professionals a lot of leeway and a lot of width to actually go out and require these backflow prevention items and have these rules rolled out. So, and how are we going to find all these cross connections? Where are we going to prevent that backflow? We're going to be doing that with our customer service inspection. So this is going to be an examination of the private water distribution facility, so inside of the connection, for the purpose of providing or denying water service. That's a key thing right there. It's not related to certificates of occupancy. I'll talk a little bit about plumbing inspections later and how they kind of butt heads with our CSIs. This inspection itself is limited to identifying and preventing cross connections, finding those hazards, actual and potential, and identifying those legal lead materials that we are worried about. So CSIs are needed in 3 different situations. Before you provide continuous service to new construction, so if you have a new house going in, a new facility being built. In addition to that, we are looking at also existing service where there's a reason to suspect. Now, a reason to suspect is a reason. You want to have something like that documented if you're going to be requiring a CSI somewhere. We saw a pool in your backyard. We're really worried about that, and we want to get that checked out. This isn't a license to start harassing people, which unfortunately some people have done. But we want to also have these CSIs done whenever there's any material improvement, correction, or addition to the private water distribution facility. So if we're at a house and they're building a little something in the back, oh, nice greenhouse, let's take a look. If it's something like we went to, I'll talk about it a little more in the presentation, but we had a customer service inspector training out in the Central Texas area. It was an electronics manufacturer, and well, they have one warehouse. Where's the rest of them? They'll be building those, and the water supplier will be working with them to kind of follow up and make sure each and every individual building that's going up there is going to be protected. So who can actually do CSIs in the state of Texas? We have 3 folks, rule of 3 for CSIs. Plumbing inspectors. This is obviously a license that you can get from the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners. Water supply protection specialists. That's also an endorsement from the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners. And there's also, of course, customer service inspectors. That's a license that TCEQ provides and has that specific training for. So walking through and inspections, what in the world are we looking for? So, all right, so for those of you that were taking a nap during the rules, you can wake up. Okay, here's the recap. These are limited, CSIs are limited to identifying those cross connections, finding those contamination hazards, and lead exceedances. So we want to identify that lead. This is required under 3 situations. New construction, we have suspected hazards, and there's an expansion of those private facilities. Now, CSIs can be done in other cases, but that needs to be recorded within the local regulation. So if there's an ordinance that says, all right, if you're a new customer, then that's not going to be required by the TCEQ. That's going to be a local authority requirement. So keep that in mind if that's something that you'd want to put in, your local regulations, because we only support these 3 at this time. So CSIs done by 3 folks. That person who's licensed from the TCEQ or holds a TCEQ license as a CSI, a plumbing inspector, or a water supply protection specialist from the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners. And I keep bringing up plumbing inspectors and inspections. This is not a plumbing inspection. Big difference here. Yes, they can be done at the same time if it's, say, a plumbing inspector doing these things but regardless, these inspections are looking at completely different things within the system. I mean, they're looking at the same thing, but instead of is everything installed correctly, did you get this thing? If things are installed correctly is basically kind of how I would summarize your plumbing inspections, but we're specifically looking at a more public health side of things where, okay, did you have this thing correctly hooked up? Is there a backflow preventer we needed, et cetera. As a customer service inspector, what are some of the things that you want to consider bringing? A flashlight. Oh boy, do some of these places get dark. I'll tell you, our water closets are not well lit, so fun. Laser pointers. That electronics manufacturer I mentioned earlier, the building, they had water lines on the top, going along the ceiling. They were about 8 to 10 stories tall, and they were very poorly labeled. Using that laser pointer kind of helps you trace kind of where everything is. A notepad, I hope I don't have to explain what that's for. Facility knowledge. So if you're, when it comes to residential facilities, of course, we're familiar with houses and apartments and how those all work. If you're looking at something maybe that's a little more intimidating, something larger, industrial perhaps, do you want to walk around with someone who kind of knows what they're looking at? Oh, this is this part of the property. This is this part of the property. I'll tell you, we were with the construction foreman who did know where everything was and was very familiar with kind of how the facility worked when we were walking around. The electronics manufacturer was pointing out this is where the water goes for this particular use. Not going to mention it because trade secrets or whatever, but CSI forms, you want to bring those. I hope I don't have to explain why. Personal protective equipment, face masks. I'll tell you, I've ruined so many carpets with my work boots. If we want to include booties, things like that. And identification. We don't want just some random person showing up and saying, I'm here from the government, I'm here to help. Hey, okay, all right. But we want to prove who we are and what we're doing. Lead swabs, important thing. I know that there's a shortage of lead swabs for 3M discontinuing their previous product, but we are required to look at lead through this particular thing. A camera, not required by the TCEQ, and Ron did touch on it. If you see something during this inspection, and if it's a backflow, if it's something that looks strange, it's like, take a picture, include that within as an attachment with your customer service inspection. Maybe they want to reference, okay, so there's this particular hazard in a water closet. Oh my God, there's so much stuff going on within a water closet or janitorial closet. Maybe focus on what exactly are you worried about there. And a sample hazards list. You can always print out what TCEQ has, our hazard appendix, just to give you an idea of some of the things to look for. Of course, it's not the comprehensive list, as we kind of touched on earlier, but give you an idea, kind of, okay, should we be worried about this? So, this is going to be kind of advice for public water suppliers. You don't want to blindside customers, please don't. We get a lot of calls for that. But for that initial notice, you want to say, we need a customer service inspection. We want to outline kind of what exactly is that? What are we asking for? Well, we want to make sure there's no cross connections, there's no hazards. Why are we requiring that customer service inspection? Well, it's because you had a pool installed. We suspect that that's a hazard, or that's considered an expansion of your facilities. We want to make sure everything's been installed correctly, where we're not putting our water system at risk. Applicable state regulations, I'll tell you, 29046J, that's one of the ones you want to include from the TCEQ saying, TCEQ is telling us that we need to go out and inspect these properties to make sure that they're protected from contamination hazards, et cetera, et cetera. Local codes, is there an ordinance that applies? So if you're in a municipality, is your plumbing ordinance going to be applicable to this? Does it have any backflow rules that are more stringent or perhaps would apply in whatever situation there is? And service agreements, a lot of times it says, I don't want you on my property. Well, sir, you agreed to this as part of getting service. So something to keep in mind, kind of what rules exactly are requiring this process to happen. So site plans, probably not a big deal if you're looking at residential facilities, but if you're looking at, I'm going to go back to that electronics manufacturer. My goodness, that was a massive facility, and we were not even allowed in a lot of parts, but I will say the plans made us map our route a little bit easier and kind of trace the water lines where we wanted to go. Who's going to be the best person to contact for more details? Who at the water supplier that is. I cannot help very much. I cannot answer specific questions. So if if a customer has specific questions, who would be the best person to reach out to? So how long will this inspection take? If it's a residence, maybe the better part of an afternoon, an hour, 2 hours, what have you. Or if it's a large facility, this could take a couple of days to kind of look at everything. If it's something even bigger, and very compact, think of like if I were to do a customer service inspection of UT's campus, I would be there a couple of weeks, wouldn't I? So I want to think about it that way. So as the inspector themselves, before the inspection, make sure you're at the right location. Who do you need to be talking to for this customer service inspection? Is it the homeowner? Is it someone within the facility? Confirm that information before you just show up and say, I'm here to inspect your property. Request someone familiar with the site, again, is maybe not such a issue when it comes to residential things that we are very comfortable and familiar with, but if we're looking at going on a refinery or any other type of chemical plant, my goodness, we're going to want to be kind of guided and shown where all those endpoint uses that they're maybe a little more familiar with. So this might be one of the opportunities, or one of the first opportunities, that customers get to learn about what an inspection is, especially if there's no substantial notification prior to the inspection. You may be the first person to actually educate them. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm doing. This is why it's important. We have a pamphlet on our website, GI 400 something or another, that goes over a lot of the basics of backflow and things we need to be worried about. That can be included as part of educational materials. So being familiar with the form, I know this should seem obvious, but I just want to make sure we touch on it because all of our forms are very dense. We want to be familiar with it before we go out and actually start doing these inspections. Read it over. What are we going to be looking at? So it's got questions on lead. It's got our questions on industrial processes. It's got questions on are there backflow preventers installed? Things that we want to be looking at and thinking about while we're walking around the facility. Remember, this is an examination of the private water distribution facilities, and this is going to help us being the water supplier in this case, if there needs to be backflow prevention or is there sufficient. So we want to be, at this point, providing and trying to provide as much information as we can so the water purveyor can make an informed decision. So doing a walkthrough, working from upstream to downstream, this is very well in CSI course. So I won't stay in this for too long, but starting at the meter, kind of what piping are you looking to inspect, knowing the age of the facility beforehand. Is there any labeling? Is it a closed system or an open system at this point? If there's already a backflow preventer there at the meter, do they have a bladder, like a bladder expansion tank for the water heater? If they don't, that's very bad, to put it nicely. And that would need to be followed up by if that information's recorded, follow up from the water purveyor, educating the customer on, you gotta fix this, or you're gonna be like in that Mythbusters episode where they blow up the water heater. Inspections, continuing on, just some of our lead-free labels and what they mean. I don't want to dwell on this too much. I mean, obviously there's multiple bodies that are certifying what lead-free is or low lead, et cetera. So just kind of want to get an idea what IATMOS looks like, what the CSA's UL, kind of what all that stuff means and looks like. So this is a little more residential focused. What are some of the outdoor hazards that we might be expecting? Things like auxiliary water supplies. We get a lot of calls saying, I put a well in my backyard. It's going into my irrigation system in my house. Why do I need this backflow preventer? Well, we don't know how well that well water's been treated. It's certainly not going to be, we don't have any control over it as the water purveyor, so we're not going to be able to certify that is safe use. Irrigation systems. Oh my goodness, these are everywhere. I don't have to tell y'all, I'm sure you see them every day. Kind of what type of irrigation system are we looking at in terms of, is it like gray water? Is that maybe a red flag? Or is it just, our potable water, making sure that it has protection? Would that be a red flag? On-site sewage and irrigation systems. This is kind of when we step out of our 290 public drinking water rules and take a step into our Texas Administrative Code Chapter 344 rules, and we speak to our friends in the landscape irrigation program. They have a rule that says if there is a septic system or on-site sewage system and an irrigation system, both present at one property, that is going to need an RP at the meter to prevent, any potential cross connections that may be there. And, you can argue until you're blue in the face, say, but they're hydraulically separated. You should come to our subcommittee meetings. You can hear about how they are not often hydraulically separated. We'll talk about that later. Hosted vacuum breakers, are these installed? Easy little $5 thing, just screw that on. And honestly, when you're walking around, just take a look at what other types of hazards you may be expecting with our hazard appendix, what have you. So looking internally, again, this is a little more residential focused. We're looking at things like our sinks. Are they air gapped? Or showers, are they air gapped? Do they have if there's a sprayer that can sit in a tub or something? Are we going to want to make sure that has a type of backflow preventer like an AVB? Is there an air gap for the dishwasher? Vacuum breakers on toilets, I'll tell you, they still have a lot of those bottom fill types of toilet fills for the tank still being sold at Home Depot. Now, my complaints did not cause them to rescind them, so anyway, we tried. So janitorial closets, again, there's a lot going on in here. Soaps, other chemicals, other types of water fill, lots of different hazards, especially when a lot of folks just put a hose on there and leave it sitting in, say, the bottom of the mop sink. That's going to get us in trouble and end up drinking some soapy, potentially hazardous, very problematic things. We also want to look at those, especially if it's, well, all facilities, especially for those older facilities, where are you going to find that lead? A lot of these sweat joints, I'm told, are locations of where, you're going to get the most recent soldering material. And to identify, you're going to use that information to answer that those lead questions, I should say, on our CSI form. What fire suppression systems are there? If there's a type there, if it's really old and it's got, say, maybe just a check valve, record that information so you can put that on your inspection form and say, what would be the appropriate follow-up? How about that? So lead testing, swab it. If it's not something clearly, obviously not lead, like, PEX and other plastic materials, using these swabs. And I did mention, and I'm sure everyone else is aware in the room, that 3M doesn't make these anymore, but there are other companies that make these red means lead swabs out there. So if you need some links, let me know. So we're going to be using that on our sweat joints, near the water heater, etc. But remember, a positive lead test is not necessarily a failure. Of course, you're not going to have lead labeling. This is a more recent requirement, as opposed to, well, if something was built in the 1970s, they're not going to have that 2014 requirement, right? So it's going to be kind of a little bit different in terms of what we're answering. If there's labeling present, great. A lot of times this gets thrown away, but you want to try to record as much information as you can. Using all this lead information, we want to tell the water purveyor, here's what we saw, and help them to determine what the most appropriate follow-up would be. Would this be to maybe look at their connection closer to require a backflow preventer? Would it require it to say, I don't know, maybe, that's a really old facility. Let's take a look at that lead service line. Maybe consider instead putting it on your lead copper sampling plan. Some things like that, to where, let's actually use this information and do something with it. Completing that inspection, compliant versus non-compliant, it's not exactly a pass-fail as much as it is recording a lot of information. But remember, we want to give the water supplier the most information to make an informed decision about this particular property. We're using this form to say, okay, do we need backflow prevention here? Okay, do we really need to be worried about this place? Use remarks or attachments, taking photos of, I know not a TCEQ requirement, but it's an excellent idea of what exactly did you see out there that's going to require that backflow prevention? What made it fail, or perhaps raise an alarm for you? So the CSI form is one of the forms that you're not required to submit the hard copy original to the public water supplier. That's the backflow form. The similar requirement is not written within our 290 rules for the CSI. But the customer should know what's in their house. They say, or at their connection, say, okay, I swab positive for lead. Do you want to be worried about this? They should be aware of what exactly that you're looking at. And then finally, get that CSI in the hands of enforcement for any follow-up. It's for the water supplier, that is now as easy as it is to just say, oh, great, you got your customer service inspection done. Boom, let's file it away. Please take a look at these things. They're more than just, dust gatherers, if you will. We want to get these forms to actually say, okay, read these remarks. What was the inspector worried about? What did he use his license for to say, there's something wrong here? And then with that information, determine what would be a good follow-up. Would it be issuing fines, cutting their water off immediately? Hopefully not. What exactly does this customer need to do to get into compliance and ensure that water quality is protected? So inspections, so I know this presentation is kind of customer service inspections in general. I just want to clarify kind of roles and responsibilities. When it comes to the customer service inspector, you take that form, you record to the best of your ability to say, okay, this is what I found, this is all my research and requirements, this is what I found on site. And then you give that to the public water supplier. And it's going to be the water supplier that says, okay, we have all this information. What are some of the hazards that he found or they found? What's being cross-connected? And what type of backflow, if any, is going to be required at these particular situations? So again, kind of going over some of those follow-ups. Are you going to need to issue letters? Say, okay, you've got 2 weeks to fix this problem, get a backflow preventer installed at, well, the identified hazard, or is there going to be a sign of, okay, letter of compliance, thank you for doing this, you're good for, well, until the next customer service inspection is required. I know CSIs, they do not have the authority to require or specifically choose what backflow prevention assembly needs to be, well, put on that inspection property. That is out of their jurisdiction. That's going to be in the water supplier's jurisdiction. So you can make a recommendation as an inspector, but you can inform the customer, I have a hunch this is what this is. You can't end up saying, okay, well, I'm gonna call my buddy, he has a plumbing company, he can get you a backflow real quick. We want to avoid that. And so for timelines, we want to kind of take a look back into our enforcement authority. What are some of the requirements? Do you have 2 weeks to get this non-health hazard protected, or do you have until tomorrow to get this health hazard fixed before we cut your water off? So we just want to kind of make a track record of what we're requiring of customers. So caveats and challenges. Things get weird when it comes to internal plumbing sometimes. So what are some of the weird things that we might end up running into? Oh my goodness, air gaps versus air breaks. Now we know air gaps, exactly, these are very specifically defined. This is going to be our unobstructed distance between our outlet and our flood rim beneath it. And the physical separation of this needs to be at least twice the diameter of the pipe, but never less than an inch. I'll tell you, not 2 weeks ago, I go into the break room at TCEQ, and oh boy, guess what I see? It is an ice machine drain line that has been perfectly routed into a little funnel with the line sitting just right in it, and oh boy, I need to call facilities. Thanks for the reminder. But not a good look. We want to ensure if there were ever a sewage backup there, we are putting these people at risk. Air brakes. That's kind of what I was describing, where you had, instead of, they did not do that air gap and it's sitting inside of the rim itself. So this doesn't provide any protection, obviously, and doesn't count as backflow prevention. So a lot of the times, these are already pre-installed, just sometimes as water purveyor, it's like, oh, just cut that part. For example, I'm trying to think. It was with hoses. You can have, okay. Mop sinks, right? This is where we fill up our mop bucket. We have water going into this, and as to prevent suds, we're going to lay that hose from the faucet into the mop bucket itself, so we can reduce suds, get out of here, less of a mess. A lot of the times, that is, we are destroying our air gap. At the best, we're doing an air brake, which at the best is still nothing and not sufficient. So a lot of the times, people just go in, cut that hose. First they crimp it on, and then they cut that hose to where they can maintain an air gap there. So overlooked hazards, a lot of consumer products. I think I mentioned the toilet fills earlier. There is very, very little support for manufacturers. At the beginning of the pandemic, back in 2020, I emailed, just for fun, one of these bidet manufacturers saying, okay, hey, what are the installation requirements? Because this is a lot of discussion going on within the community. And they said it needs to be installed per plumbing code. That doesn't answer my question, but okay. So, of course, in which case we're kind of left holding the bag and saying, okay, well, we need to follow up. What would be an appropriate protection here? Like I said, out of code items still sold. Be wary. Home Depot and Lowe's and all these other hardware stores, a homeowner can just walk in, purchase something, and it might be incorrect. And we want to try to prevent that as best as we can, but we're still kind of facing that, butting heads there. Soda machines, with plumbing code, those require, according to plumbing code, we'll get a little asterisk there, and we'll work on that second line in a second. These say these need to be stainless steel, dual-check, vented backflow prevention devices. Well, it's easy to say, okay, well, that's what plumbing code says, right? TCEQ is more stringent in this particular case because we're looking at a high pressure, so a high risk of back pressure, chemically changing the water, so that could be a health hazard. We want to make sure that there's an RP there. So if you identify something behind that soda machine that's not supposed to be there and it's not an RP, that's a red flag. We want to mark that on our inspection report. Okay, so we also want to kind of assess the hazard. Now this is for the water purveyor, right? We have our customer service inspection form. We have all these different types of hazards at a facility. They're all unprotected. This is terrible. we want to ask 3 questions, and these are slightly modified from the University of Southern California's Cross-Section Control 10th edition manual. We want to think about, okay, first, is this a direct or indirect cross-connection? Is this something we can easily, is it piped in, or is this something that we can remove? So basically, is there going to be a risk of back pressure or and back siphonage, or is it just going to be back siphonage? Is it a health hazard or non-health hazard? If you recall in our hazard appendix, again, not a full list of hazards, but on that actual list itself, it has a little asterisk on the bottom saying, okay, if this is not all-inclusive list. If there's something that could be a health hazard, additional protection with RPs may be required. Kind of emphasizing that, hey, we need to do these things. And is the connection going to be under continuous pressure? So you could, in some places, install a PVB where an AVB is, right? PVBs can handle continuous pressure. Not all the time are you going to be able to install an AVB to replace a PVB, because I don't have to tell y'all that little float's going to get stuck and not going to be doing its job. But document with the remarks what those hazards are and why we're worried about them. So this is this is from USC, kind of with those thinking about those questions. So we'll go over this. It's just a little quick exercise for kind of deciding what would be an appropriate backflow preventer. We want to ask, is there going to be a risk of back pressure? What's that hazard level? And is there going to be continuous pressure? Basically, is the water always on? So, all right. Let's think about this one, assessing hazards. We have a private pool with float valve to automatically fill the water beneath that flood rim. So we're looking at, no, there's no risk of back pressure. There's no pump or anything that's going to elevate that pressure. It's open to atmosphere within at the pool. So, but what type of hazard is this? It's a swimming pool, well maintained, looks great. That's going to be your non-health hazard. That this is going to cause irritating complaints, but this isn't going to kill you. And is there going to be continuous pressure? Well, if the float valve is waiting for that water level to go up and down, then the water's got to be on all the time, so it'll actually fill, right? So we're looking at continuous pressure. So something like a PVB, an RP, a double check, an air gap would also be appropriate here. So, ice maker drain lines. Now, we're looking at, for ice machines, we have 2 places where where water actually goes in to create the ice, as well as the drain line for whenever the ice melts and going into the sewer line. So we know that a lot of these ice machines have air gaps on the inside, but what about the sewage line for the drain? So there's no risk of back pressure. That drain line is just exposed to atmosphere. There's no pump or anything that's going to push that water back. But we're looking at a potential connection or an actual connection, depending on how it's set up, to sewage, right? Do you want to drink sewage? Neither do I. So that is definitely, we're going to classify that as a health hazard. So now, is it under continuous pressure? No, not really. This water is just freely dripping until, well, it gets to the sewer line when it melts. So not really. So something like AVB, PVB, RP, or most appropriately for this type of situation, the cheapest one is an air gap. So looking at soda machines, now these, we kind of talked about it a little bit already, so hopefully we kind of know where this one's going. Is there going to be a risk of back pressure? Absolutely. We are looking at, these post-mix carbonators can generate anywhere from 150 to 400 PSI, which is definitely going to exceed our system pressure of, I don't know, I have 90 PSI at my house. Certainly more than our 35 minimum TCEQ requirements. And looking at the hazard level, so yes, we have delicious soda. I wouldn't call Coca-Cola a health hazard. My dentist would. Hey, okay. We're still, with that post-mix carbonator, we are still changing the chemistry of the water. We're turning it from a delicious water to acid, basically with the carbonic acid. So with that, we are looking at a health hazard that requires either an RP or an air gap. So can the CSI be used to determine if there is no hazard? Absolutely. Recording that information is excellent in terms of with that follow-up information. So at any residence or establishment where there is no actual potential hazard, contamination hazard, a backflow prevention assembly is not required. So a couple examples, if you can use that CSI to determine a hydraulically separate well from that is just completely separate, detached, nowhere near, whatever, does not pose a potential hazard to the water supply as determined by the PWS, then are we still going to require backflow prevention here? Maybe, maybe not. That's going to be up to the water supplier to determine. I know a big example that we have in our RGs is our dental chairs. They are self-contained for the most part, especially the more modern fancy ones. So is that going to be posing a hazard if they're just sitting by themselves in a tank? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. So if we can prove that those are separate, record that, and we can kind of proceed with other local public water supply requirements. So mobile home parks, we get a lot of questions about these. Mobile homes, these are basically, I would say, lead-free. They prohibit lead and cross connections ever since 1976, and this is through federal rule. So you could still do a customer service inspection on the outside of the property. Maybe they have a little garden, whatever may be there. So you can still do that, but inside we know federal regulations say thou shalt have none of these things. To get that certification, they still have to continue to manufacture to that. So we have so many resources and for kind of beefing up your inspection skills. So that's what I would kind of look at for 206 for customer service inspectors. For water suppliers, we just have so much guidance with, okay, you have a situation, how can you improve your program in terms of kind of going out, following up with inspections or even backflow testing. So RG 478s are our big one that hopefully gets published, republished, I should say, excuse me, with additional information. This is our big how-to book, if you will. GI 411, that's going to be our pamphlet to educate customers, and backflow protection on fire prevention systems, an excellent source on kind of, okay, you found there is a sprinkler system here, what do we need to do to follow up with this? So USC also has an excellent document on post-mix carbonators and soda machines and what's required there. So additional resources, backflow is a great industry. Everyone across the country, everyone across the world is dealing with this, and we can all lean on each other to kind of, improve our programs and do better. I'll say that the USC Cross Connection Control has they have excellent trainings that are very expensive, but they have some excerpts that I think were very valuable for customer service inspections. We have some folks with Hardin Consulting, Hardin Associates Consulting did an excellent video a few years ago about doing customer service inspections, a literal walkthrough. I will say a lot of this information that's kind of outside Texas requirements and best practices comes from, I'm trying to remember the city. It was the Cross Connection Control Program Manager, it was Wednesday Smith with Kirkland, Washington, who did a presentation on surveys, because of course, Texas, we call them customer service inspections, just different words for the same things, who did an excellent presentation on how she did these surveys, identifying, so a lot of that information is in here, and if you want any of that information, I'm happy to share it, but this was from the American Backflow Prevention Association's annual meeting this year. So we still have plenty of other publications. I think I'm running out of time, but I will go ahead and touch on these. We have our manual cross-connection control. You're going to get this as a backflow tester as part of your class and training. And there's some additional AWWA and USC guidance materials there on their website. Finally, we have our cross-connection control subcommittee meeting. These are remote and in-person meetings, just talking about what's going on in the backflow world. Trainers, regulators, other folks, general public are welcome as well, just to talk about what the backflow issues there are. We have some different types of projects going on. One of the ones that we're assisting with is with the landscape irrigation programs. They had a municipal landscape irrigation program survey, so if you're with a municipality, let me know. We're trying to get some information on backflow prevention and other types of testing frequencies. So, and these are held on Teams. If you want to attend these, you're more than welcome to. Please shoot me an email. You can sign up on our website. I hope to see y'all there, or at least hear y'all. So thank you for, hopefully that wasn't too much, but I just want to emphasize that, in previous in previous conferences, we've said that CSIs are the keystone of a cross-context control program. They're the foundation. These are so important. This is when your boots are first on the ground. We're finding things out there, and we want to protect them. We don't want to end up in the news, and well, we know how that goes. So thank you, everyone. Please feel free to email me, call me. I want to know what issues you're having out in the field, and I want to help you with them. Yes, sir. Terry, if you could. Sorry.
I had the experience of being a plumbing inspector in a previous life, but the fact is, in my neighborhood, about 9 people had their house remodeled. And ironically, on both sides of me, they were putting in irrigation systems. And I went over and looked, and I noticed they didn't have a backflow prevention device on either one. So I called code enforcement, City of Houston, to come out and take care of those. And I called the architectural person for the homeowners association, who was supposed to be responsible for making sure that everybody was meeting code, and found out that the one next to me had 5 violations of the code, City of Houston. The other one had 3, and then the other ones, and the code enforcers came out, and I talked to them and told them, since I teach for TEEX, for TEEX, that we teach those courses. And I said, well, okay, let me ask you this. What is the issue about not having these code enforcement inspections being done? He said, we don't have enough code enforcers inspectors, and that's an issue, he said, for the City of Houston, 7,000 miles of distribution line. So my thought is this, and I understand talking and teaching in classes that a lot of the cities and towns and so forth do not have enough code enforcers and inspectors to take care of all the remodeling that's done in a lot of homes. So do you see that as an issue?
Typically we do, yes, we just don't have the manpower, and it's, I wish TCEQ could help and have the answer a little more than do your best, which doesn't really quite help anyone. And I wish I had a better answer than that, but it's kind of Ron talked about approaching things like a triage, so we want to just focus on those high priorities to low priorities. And, once we finally get down to those medium-lower priorities, kind of like those remodels, and, that's just kind of how we'll have to do it. And I hate saying that, but, support your local municipality. I'll say that. Cool.